Welcome to the Liberty UA channel. Today we are joined by Yeliseevich. Denis, welcome.
Hello, Tatiana and viewers.
Dennis, some interesting information appeared today in the Telegraph. They reported that supposedly Europe is ready to make a historic decision for Ukraine. They believe that NATO could create an air defense shield over Western and Central Ukraine. What do you think? Why is this being discussed only now? Could it be that Trump's decision influenced this and now NATO countries are at war? Will this air defense shield be created, and do you believe in this idea that it will happen?
I think this is a bluff. I don't believe in this idea. And you know, it sounds especially hypocritical. The war has lasted 3.5 years with many deaths. Why wasn't this done at the beginning of the war? How many lives could it have saved? Putin could have been hit harder or slowed down more elsewhere. I don't believe it now. I think it's just another rumor. I just don't believe it.
It's just an extremely catastrophic situation happening every day now. Between 3 and 4 in the afternoon, 8 explosions occurred in the Dnipropetrovsk region. When people hear this kind of information, they believe that somehow they can eventually be protected. Here's another situation, the European drone wall. Its goal is to protect the eastern flank of the European Union, supposedly hasn't been created yet. This wall is planned to be built by 2030. Ukraine will help with information, ideas, and technologies. What do you think? Why won't they build such a wall in Ukraine if they're already talking about creating it? Currently, we face a catastrophic situation unlike Europe.
Well, you need unreal resources to build such a wall. Are you in a corrupt environment when you give drone tenders to your associates, your friends? Business can't operate that way during war. But again, I'll tell you, I don't believe that Europe will build such a wall against drones. I've heard a very skeptical attitude toward this idea in America and from some European figures. That is, in my opinion, things like this are being said to influence Putin, to create some kind of impression for him that everything is serious, that he will face serious resistance and serious difficulties. Of course, I'm not much of an expert, but just as an addition, as I see it, you mentioned until 2030, that's in 5 years. Can you imagine how many technologies will change in 5 years? How much more will change? And what do we see against the backdrop of the current war? Russia has started a drone race. Just as we catch up somewhere, just as we find an antidote, they have already improved and are a step ahead in terms of quantity. I'm not even considering it, since Russia's closest partner and ally is probably China, so that changes everything. So Europe wants to build, but for which components? That requires relations with China, and China is not going to arm Europe. If we're talking about real military scale volumes, there are a lot of questions. If you do it yourself, even imagining the cost price of such a drone assembled in Europe and in China would be very different. Well, maybe Ukraine will be involved in this as a relatively cheap labor force. Well, in short, there are still only questions left. And I want to say once again, the end of September 2025. Only now have they started talking about it, and they're only talking about it because Putin started launching these drones everywhere. Well, to get on their nerves, to test their reaction. That's all the preparation. What do these serious faces in suits lead to? The ones who say, Milei is a populist, Trump is a populist, this one's a populist, that one's a populist. Aren't these guys populists too? What kind of disaster have they brought the world to? Putin is launching drones at Europe as if it's a computer game. Where is this headed? I'm sending people a signal. Maybe we need to choose different people, not those who label everyone as populists while actually being populists themselves.
There's one thing I just can't understand. Such loud statements are made by representatives of European Union countries, meaning these are the leaders of those countries. It's not like they went to the market and asked what would happen with one person saying one thing and another saying something else. And so I follow the channels run by political bloggers. And often when a blogger makes some prediction, like they think something will happen soon, they share it with their viewers. When it doesn't happen right away, viewers say, like, we told you, we don't believe you. Currently, statements like this are made at the European Union level without any reaction or consequences. Why do people in such positions allow themselves to do this?
Because the people allow it, but why do people react this way? Let's say, for example, I received some information that was relevant at a certain moment and shared it with people. Suppose around 30% changes or deadlines are delayed. Then someone starts making complaints to me, they can get to me, I'm an easy target because I'm being persecuted. You can write nasty comments or do more, but they don't realize I'm actually on their side. But what can you say to a European official? What can you say to Zelensky? It's scary. You could get in trouble. They'll track you down. They'll knock on your door. That's how everything works. People very easily make demands of those who owe them nothing, who have no real levers of influence, and demand nothing from those who actually have real levers of influence. And they really want, when they read news about other countries, they want perfect politicians. They know which people I support, like Trump, to some extent Nayib Bukele. I praise Meloni from Italy. They immediately find the flaws in the comments, some failures, and by doing this, people want to show that these are bad politicians. Find someone better. When it comes to someone else, they look for the perfect one when they have to choose. In Ukraine, excuse my French, they pick the worst stuff.
I still haven't figured out this paradox for some reason. Recently, there was a survey about whom people would like to see as president, who they have the most hope in, and here are the candidates. The one who gets the most public support, so to speak, is Zaluzhny, followed by Zelensky. It also seems that Budanov is not far behind. Why do people prefer military leaders? Do they trust them more, see them as stronger, or believe they have more influence? Or what is happening?
For some people, it gives a feeling, a false sense of security. Some people see new heroes. Some of them are made into media personalities. People automatically... Who do we hear about? I'll support this one. I don't buy Beletsky's second place. It's clear manipulation, but what's the goal here? What are they trying to get people interested in? They're offering two options, both incorrect. People like the ones on these lists you mentioned, if you check their background, it's just a nightmare. A real nightmare. And people seriously consider them, and they consider themselves too. Some oligarchs will try to turn them into politicians. Honestly, that's scary in itself. You mentioned Budanov as the third, but the issue isn't about him. No matter what kind of intelligence officer is in that position, people see what happened in Russia when an intelligence officer was made president when they set it up for him. Call it elections if you want. But even this lesson doesn't teach them anything. So they want to do the same thing in Ukraine. They're really at the level of teenagers in terms of understanding. First, they do something, see how it works, and might draw conclusions, but probably not. They try to explain something, you run into some rudeness, for example, or when it comes to the whole media space, those manipulators, they try to impose things. Currently, there's a narrative that only those who've served on the front lines should have the right to vote, or especially be elected. Let's think logically. Should we honor those on the front lines? Yes, the state owes them financially and owes them a lot. But politics, if we're talking about real changes, reforms, and so on, certain competencies are needed. But the fact that the person was on the front lines, with all due respect, does not guarantee they have competencies in politics. This connection needs to be restored. I'm not saying no one on the front lines can do it. Some can, just like in civilian life. Not everyone on the front lines automatically gets treated like a hero who can do anything or knows everything. That's just amateurism. It will lead to a new disaster.
How would you describe the recent parliamentary elections that took place in Moldova? It seems that the pro-European party won, and already, based on this news, Europeans have allocated grants to Moldova. Some people say this is very good. Now we are moving towards Europe, while others are in opposition. They say that gas and oil will be expensive. What is your assessment? Is there a monopoly rule there now? What do you think will happen in Moldova in the government process?
Is it really such a serious topic, So, in Moldova, the situation is also like this. There are two choices. Both of them are wrong. One side is really pro-Russian, Soviet style, and the other side, well, I call it Soros. United States Agency for International Development globalists, who are trying to create a number of countries around Russia, including Ukraine, as a kind of strange irritant for Russia. To use these countries as a shield, to cover Central and Western Europe with these countries, meaning the Baltic states, Moldova, and Ukraine. This arrangement is totally unacceptable. Why? Because even this anti-Russian rhetoric, and I also oppose the Russian world, in the end, as with the horseshoe principle at the bottom, brings about the same thing as the Russian world. Well, look, If the party of these pro-Russian people had won in Moldova, believe me, they wouldn't have recognized these elections. This group of globalists would have won. We'll see similar events in Romania. They don't allow a third political force in, even if one existed in Moldova. That's it. That's it.
Europeans are now speaking out and saying that democracy and true democratic values have won in Moldova. And if the executive and legislative branches of power are represented by the same group, the same wing, do you think we can really talk about democracy?
No, you see, there are a million questions for Maya Sandu there. Moldova is a small country. Is it easier to implement reforms in a small country or a large one like Ukraine? In Ukraine, perhaps no one has tried to implement them, but in Moldova, it's much more noticeable. The country is small. Everyone supports Maya Sandu. How long has she been president? Nothing is changing. But she just perfectly serves the quarrels with the United States Agency for International Development globalists. We're in Europe, but I know that there in Moldova, there's censorship. They don't let you speak freely. You see, the situation is like this. If they like you, you fit in, you can speak. If they don't like you, you don't fit in, you can't. In Ukraine, they don't like me, I don't fit in, and even without the war, they wouldn't let me speak. This is the Soros group that bought and funds these media outlets. That's our fear. It's the same with the Russian world. If you're against it, they won't even let you speak. But it's really prison, persecution, and possibly even death. In the end, maybe no one has been killed yet. But that's not democracy. What I'm getting at is it's like whatever Putin wants or whatever the so-called globalists want, that's what happens. It fits and they like it, but people have no real choice or democracy. That's my point. Not in Moldova, no. Not in Ukraine, no. And in the Baltic countries, they're also trying to impose militarism, teaching people to operate drones, and they're also putting pressure on the Russian language there. What about the Baltic countries? Most have already left, and people continue to leave on their own. There, for example, Lithuanians or Latvians or Estonians are leaving for more prosperous European Union countries, and Russians aren't allowed to speak Russian there, so they leave too. For example, either to the European Union somewhere deeper and more successful, or to Russia. What's left in these countries? Only the military devastation and no financial activity or money. They want to do the same thing with Ukraine, a big country. There are many people, many heroic ones. It's remarkable. Let them fight and die against Russia while we rearm or do our own thing. Or maybe not even that. Well, in short, the main thing is that everything will be fine in Central and Western Europe. And trying to implement their own things there, the things they're pushing, well, these are the radical leftists, basically creating a Euro-Soviet system.
Orban has banned certain Ukrainian media outlets at the state level because this was a response to the fact that Ukrainians had banned certain Hungarian publishers in Ukraine. What do you think? This ban on freedom of speech, banning media outlets, where does this lead? What does it say? That's why Hungary acted this way. Ukraine knows we're under martial law, making it hard for us to respond. Hungary, what?
Zelensky has a straightforward answer. He's clearly confronting Orban and by extension Hungary. After drones were seen at the border, Zelensky stated again that they will shoot them down. Orban just acts. He responded by blocking the largest media outlets there. What's the point of this? Some Ukrainians in Hungary will stop reading these media outlets, which is actually a good thing. Anyone determined will use a VPN. Well, that's the kind of confrontation we're dealing with.
And do you evaluate Lukashenko's publicity? He says it would benefit Ukraine to start negotiations now under the current terms. Otherwise, we'll lose more territory and he'd be open to meeting with Zelensky. Zelensky says that this is pure nonsense. What do you think?
Well, look, for example, I'm a libertarian, and of course, I am disgusted by any autocracy, any dictators like Putin and Lukashenko. Being in power for 25 years is unhealthy. Here's one side of the issue. The other is that there are realities. And suppose someone with my views and ideology became Ukraine's president. You can't choose your neighbors, just like we can't change the governments in Russia and Belarus. That means you have to negotiate. That's just how things are geographically. That's how life works out. You need to negotiate So if I were in Zelensky's place, no matter what Lukashenko is like, you have to go and negotiate, and that's what any smart person would do. Trump dislikes many people too, but you must negotiate since you accepted this responsibility. This isn't a private country or shop. The president can't behave that way, no matter your personal feelings. You can do business with someone you like or don't like, that's your personal business. When dealing with a country of tens of millions, you must negotiate even with Lukashenko. I'll repeat, you may dislike or reject his ideology, and he's been an autocrat for a century who won't step down, but you must negotiate for Ukraine's sake. And what's in your soul? Please, whatever you want.
Well, in your soul. We recently heard a statement from Sibiha. Is that from his soul, or where did he get that information from? But he was talking about the fact that now Russians need to look for shelter places to hide because Ukrainians will attack them in response to what they are doing to Ukraine. On our side, we received information yesterday that the Swedish planes we've been waiting for so long will finally arrive. But what is the reason for the delay? We need pilots, the ones we manage, they need to be trained for 6 to 12 months. So what do you think, considering that we are receiving such new equipment? Does Europe make these promises? They claim they will close the sky over Ukraine, prompting our authorities' bold statements. Or is this some other strategy?
Let's divide it into two parts. Regarding Sibiha, it's very easy to make such intimidating statements when you're in a bunker yourself and your family will be in a shelter. Basically, they're all protected, as are their families. I'll say this, they're acting tough, but in the end, it's ordinary people who get hit. Just before going on air with you, I saw the terrible strike in central Dnipro. Sibiha wasn't there. It's not officials who suffer, but the residents and people of Dnipro, Ukrainians. That's how it works. So statements like that, I wouldn't make them. To me, it just looks terrible. I don't like any confrontational statements because what choice do we have? War or further confrontation, or rather peace or confrontation if we're talking about peace. You can't say peace is the main goal for 2025 like Zelensky did yesterday and then have Sibiga threaten blockades in Moscow today. That doesn't make sense. About the F-16s and all those planes. When the war started, remember, at the very beginning, we had this fixed idea, we were all waiting. There were Leopards, Gepards, tanks, those Abrams. Once the Abrams arrive, we'll crush Russia. They arrived, but it turned out they weren't relevant at all. On the battlefield, it turned out to be a drone war, not like World War II. Then we had the same thing with the F-16s. Like, once the F-16s arrive, we'll show them. No one gave them. It's not for people, but I'm sending a message to them. But think about why they weren't given. Maybe because the globalists, who along with Putin are the beneficiaries of this war, don't want them to be given. Maybe that's how it should be. If they wanted to protect Ukraine, to help, they probably would have given them. There are plenty of them in Europe, in America, but they aren't giving them, and now these are just empty statements. F-16s won't change anything on the battlefield. And now we've come up with something new to worship. Tomahawks, give us Tomahawks. I'm a military man, not an expert, but I've learned about their launch methods. These missiles are very complex. Without Americans, this can't be done. If an American launches it at a computer, that's direct war involvement. I doubt Trump would go for this. There's a 95% chance he won't. People are already using Tomahawks, but returning to that point, I don't recall their range, but Flamingo was said to have a 3,000 kilometer range, and now they have those. So why do we need Tomahawks? So even if you just look at what you just mentioned and go through that chain, nothing matches up anywhere, nothing adds up. In the end, it's just empty statements. Statements mostly for the domestic audience to show what processes are going on, that we can still do something. This isn't talk about peace, you see. We need peace. Putin is bad. Putin is an aggressor. Subtitles. But just the same to your question about Lukashenko. Do we need peace or not? The only way out is peace. Believe me, the terms for peace will only get worse from here on out. Every additional month of war will only turn out badly for Ukraine. That's how it is. The longer the war, the worse it gets. I'm not even addressing demographics or people leaving. Many have lost faith in the government and some in the country itself, which is not right. Things will only get worse. We need peace and initiative. All I hear about are terrifying missiles. But I haven't heard a single proposal from Zelensky, from Sibiga, from Yermak, from those who actually make decisions. Come out and say, here is what we are offering Russia, this, and this. We don't know. Not even the memorandum that our side put on the table in Istanbul for Russia. It's all secret, shrouded in darkness. I haven't heard any proposals. I have some myself, They're unpleasant for many, even me, but they're realistic. And to say something like that in a late-night negotiation, like when you withdraw all your troops, even a child knows that's unrealistic. But for some reason, Zelensky, they keep repeating it.
They act, and we really want peace. But we found ourselves in a situation where we all hoped for Trump because no one else promised us peace, only Trump did, so we hoped. Now, after this meeting between Zelensky and Trump took place and representatives of Europe were there, Trump told Europe, now you are solving this problem together because America is far away, you are militarily involved, this is your issue. Now, Europe is promising us that they will close, well, at least they are talking about closing the sky over Ukraine, over the West, and little by little they are giving us these weapons. But we understand that, again, the sky might remain open and there might be very little weaponry. The offensives persist. We may lose more land and we no longer know how to achieve peace. People don't know how to move towards peace. What do you think? Should we take the initiative? You can't go out to Maidan. It's impossible to announce it there. It's dangerous. So they just can't manage to seek the truth.
Yes, today a citizen of Ukraine has no leverage at all. Absolutely no leverage. Those polls will still be rigged however they want. A citizen of Ukraine can't do anything, and citizens can't initiate anything. It's the authorities who have to initiate something. And believe me, even if Russia doesn't manage to seize any other territories, unfortunately, there's a high chance that they will take more territories. That's not good either. Let's imagine that Russia hasn't taken a single more centimeter of territory, and in Western Ukraine, as you say, they've built this drone wall, the Europeans have done something there. So what happens next? That means it's good. For example, there won't be protection over Kharkiv, and there won't be such protection over Odessa or Dnipro, and there won't be such protection over Kyiv either. Here's what Zelensky says next. Israel gave us, well, it's clear, on the instructions of the United States, a Patriot system. He said that. The next day, massive shelling caused huge casualties and horrific video and photos. For those who live there, it's really... The war must end. This isn't a solution, but people believe it due to media influence. Yeah, they're like, oh, we have to wait for a drone wall. Oh, we have to wait for air defense from the European Union or NATO over Western Ukraine. Does this solve the problem? No, it doesn't. This is for Ukraine. Getting weapons just to keep fighting, like the Biden administration did, they gave just enough not to win and not to lose, just to keep the war going. That's not a solution to the situation. I don't get why some people are so hyped about this. The war seems to be their whole purpose in life, even though most aren't involved. But we have to, but why surrender right away? The other alternative, why surrender, capitulate? Who is saying to capitulate? It's painful for us to propose something that satisfies everyone, but there's no other way. It used to be easier in Istanbul. Why didn't we sign it? And that should be the number one question. Right now, we might not even be discussing all this. The war could have been over long ago, but we didn't sign it. For some reason, we ended up with worse conditions, and now it's all starting again, leading to even worse terms.
As for whether they will capture more territory or not, we really hope they won't. I want to stress that protecting the lives of people at war and those suffering is most important. But Peskov made a statement, and this statement is concerning. He says that in Mykolaiv, in Odessa, there are people who don't mind being together with Russia. And don't you read in these words that they supposedly want to capture these cities too, or will want to capture them supposedly under the pretense of protecting the Russian-speaking population? What is the point of his quote?
That's nonsense from Peskov. If there were really that many pro-Russian people in Ukraine, specifically in Mykolaiv and Odessa, these cities would have fallen in the first days of the war. But Odessa, for sure. Odessa held out, even with, to put it mildly, not the best mayor, with a very compromised one. Odessa held out. Putin has killed so many Russian-speaking Ukrainians that even his former supporters now hate him. Do you understand what's happening? Why is he doing this? Peskov? We remember a Russian general, can't recall his last name, but he had one. In his office, they showed maps featuring Kherson, Odessa, Dnipro, and Mykolaiv. In my opinion, it was like everything was already under Russia. These are the goals. On one hand, it's intimidation, and on the other hand, possibly plans. They've been saying a lot about Transnistria lately, claiming they'll move on to Odessa and Vinnytsia, making various statements. That's the horror of war. We're constantly expecting some kind of strike from everywhere, and they just get more and more irritated. Pavesh isn't satisfied, so we'll take more and conditions will worsen. Where will this lead? The way he ate.
And Orban says that Ukraine no longer has independence. It's not a sovereign state. It's completely dependent on Europe. So what do you think, despite the fact that we really have a very difficult financial situation right now and we are dependent on Europe, are we still independent and sovereign?
No, well, you can really get caught up on words like that. Let's stick to the facts, If today the financial support from the United States and Europe stops, then Ukraine will fall within a few months. That's just a fact. That means Ukraine won't be able to fight, won't be able to pay pensions or anything else. Collapse of the country. Well, I think in 2 or 3 months, a real collapse will happen. It's not about dependence. Ukraine has relied on help during the war, and ever since it allowed NGOs like Soros into the country to operate freely. You see, that's all. At some point it was dependence on Russia, more so under Yanukovych. So that's it. Like I said, they can catch you for your words there, basically document all of it. Let each viewer decide if it's dependence or independence. Confusing dependence with partnership or alliance isn't always bad, but in the country we're in now, in the situation our country is in, people shouldn't dream that everything will be decided in Kyiv. No, it won't, unfortunately it won't.
If only we knew where, because at first they talked about Budapest, then Geneva, and even Kazakhstan. Now Lukashenko is saying, come to Belarus, he's ready to meet with Zelensky here. Where do you think this negotiation table will be? In which country and capital?
Well, to be honest, at first I believed more in something like Geneva or Vienna. But now, looking at all this and knowing a few things, my view has changed. Well, how much are the Americans in contact with the Belarusians right now? And I really didn't expect that at all. Let's say, and I understand that after all, there are probably very serious negotiations going on with Lukashenko regarding Ukraine. And he is showing strong initiative. And for some reason, I tend to think that at some stage there will be very important negotiations in Minsk. Maybe Trump himself will fly to Minsk. Trump, Putin, Zelensky, but not tomorrow or the next day. Maybe something like that.
We talked with you today about the fact that this could happen, the situation could change. When you mention a collapse in Ukraine, do you mean military, economic, or that people can't endure it? What type specifically?
No. If the funding stops, if you just take it and stop it, America stops, yes, even if it continues to provide intelligence. Without ammunition, weapons, or funding, nothing can be achieved. The economy, front, and society will collapse. Currently, pensions and social benefits rely solely on subsidies. The West, that's just a fact. We discussed this recently. You know, they have a 60 billion shortfall, half of it, well, in short, some astronomical numbers. That's why I don't want it to come to that, and it shouldn't, under any circumstances. Well, I think they won't allow it. Of course, we're just modeling scenarios here, because no one would please Putin like that, so to speak. But I don't like that in this situation, it's as if Ukrainians are being used as bargaining chips with their lives somewhere out there. It's very unpleasant.
Please tell us what's happening in America. The military has gathered there, the top military echelons. They're discussing that America needs to be ready in case there's a need for confrontation with China. There was talk about Russia in Ukraine as well, that we also need to be ready for anything. What do you think? And by the way, what was interesting is that Trump mentioned those submarines with nuclear weapons that previously had to be taken out to sea. Do you think there is any real tension? Because as we talked about before, it was said that China and America supposedly want to establish contact and good relations. It seems that Trump already wants to meet with the president of China. Is this just for show, or is there actually tension?
You see, both Trump and basically Xi Jinping, even though I don't like him, are smarter than, for example, Zelensky and, for example, smarter than Putin. So everyone knows that China is enemy number one. But Trump says that Xi Jinping is almost his best friend. Do you understand? And trade is going on. If it were us, Zelensky would already be cursing out Putin, and who knows what else would be happening. Globally, I'll tell you now why this situation is happening. This is today's Pete Hex, the Minister of Defense. Trump is speaking. While Biden was president, men in skirts, transgender people, and all sorts of strange things appeared in the American army. Biden was telling stories, again, the globalists' aides telling stories about some kind of climate issues. This is not allowed, the climate. This is not allowed. It's all fake, all fake. At that time, Xi Jinping was building missiles, airplanes, tanks, and ships. China is building a huge number of things similar to what Putin was doing. I don't even want to discuss what happened here. What were they doing that starts with H? But the time has come. and now everyone has seen it. Thank God President Trump won. He's just trying to fix this situation. Considering America's crazy wealth, crazy technologies, innovations, all of this is to catch up and surpass and to cool down the fervor of Xi Jinping and Putin a bit. The bad news is that I want to prepare people. Unfortunately, we have to live in such an era. In the next 5 years, there will be hotspots of tension. I don't believe in World War III. I think Putin's war will end. It's all funny, but there will be hotspots of tension. Drones have been launched, and in about 2 years, Xi Jinping will get involved, saying he's going to deal with Taiwan, and maybe he'll even try. There will constantly be hotspots of tension in the coming years, but this will start to subside. When Putin leaves, well, leaves not in the sense that someone overthrows him, but when he stops being the president of Russia, Putin will be in China, and there are very wealthy democratic elites there who will also want to remove the Communist Party. Well, Lukashenko is a minor figure, but still, little by little, little by little. That will only happen if right-wing forces win in Europe. You see, we'll have to go through a path that can't be avoided if we want to fix the situation in the world. Who is causing all the harm? Soros and all that group who stir up trouble all over the world, and basically together with people like Putin, provoke these escalations of war and everything else.
Today, I accidentally joined a stream, and there they even talked about how now Ukraine shouldn't negotiate with Trump, but should ask Soros for help to stop this war in Ukraine. So the situation still looks tense, and I would like to ask you one more question to finish. We have already discussed this regarding Europe earlier, but if Europeans see that this tension is growing, why don't they stop buying Chinese goods? Yesterday, for example, reports emerged about lithium deposits in Germany, because China is valued for precious metals that are used in the production of Teslas, phones, weapons, and so on. Do you think Germany might already be able to cover large volumes of these needs or not yet?
Well, they just found it. It takes a huge amount of time and investment to develop all of this. We have it all in Ukraine, in the Kirovohrad region. No, definitely not. The lithium Toshka deposit ranks in Europe's top 3. Then Javier Milei signed a contract with Tesla. In Argentina, I mean, in normal countries, all this exists too, but it doesn't happen in one day. You said to stop trading with China, but they can't now because it would cause a food collapse. Trade is so deeply integrated and has such massive turnover that if it suddenly stopped, there would be a food collapse and authorities would be overthrown due to public outrage. Those who approved this became hostages to the monster they created. And with people like Jinping and Putin, you see, that's exactly where the fear of the situation lies. Now we'll have to maneuver. Just waiting until first of all these old men fall, and secondly showing that we can do something too. It's best to stay out of it and not think about it. This is an arms race, and how do they end? Badly for people's lives. If they're focused on weapons over innovation, America will handle innovation, Mars colonization, and weapons, that's clear, but Europe won't. As for countries like Ukraine, I won't mention them. Here, it's about the country surviving and hoping some creative people stay, rather than just a few. Officials, pensioners, and those who simply don't have the financial means or physical ability to leave even after the war, even with open borders. For example, Ukraine could have 20 million people left, 8 million pensioners, a few million children and officials, and no creative class remaining. That's it. You could say the country no longer exists.
I can't imagine who would be considered creative in Ukraine. Right now, under such intense stress with bombs and drones flying every night, people are chronically sleep deprived.
Some entrepreneurs like Tatiana work under rocket attacks. I did too until I had to leave. The war starts on February 24. By the second week of March, we had already resumed work with hundreds of people and processes, all under rocket attacks and constant stress, not knowing what tomorrow would bring. And right now in Ukraine, a lot of people work like that, entrepreneurs, but fewer and fewer. You've read about it, they let them go, which is right. Young Ukrainians are already there. Many Kyiv restaurants are preparing to close due to a lack of waiters. That's fine, that's a different topic. Since starting your own people's departure is where I'll stop. This is Zelensky's main complaint. Look, not only did he build a dictatorship, he also started some kind of war against his own people. Yes, there are a lot of problems, but everything that Putin is doing right now doesn't stop everyone from being united inside, living at home in Ukraine, working in Ukraine, and speaking their mind in Ukraine. If that were truly the case, believe me, Putin would notice, and he does. That benefits him. Shame. Why did Zelensky do this? Because he's actually weak, and he simply can't govern Ukraine any other way. If he governs democratically, he'll quickly fail, and everyone will see his low political ability.
And do you think that if a leader with completely different views came to power and started bringing order to the country, how many years will it take Ukraine to recover so we can live normally again? 3, 20?
No, 1 year. I won't say that all the infrastructure will be restored, but those are details. Globally, 1 year. The most important thing is the economy and reforms. Trust me, it can be done fast. First, all unnecessary government expenses are cut, officials are reduced, ministries are closed, all the excess is cut off first. And people are given the opportunity to earn money with minimal taxes, with very minimal and convenient taxes. And people start to feel uplifted and just, oh, so you can live here, I want to live here? Taxes, crazy bureaucracy, and in Ukraine? I know the language, people, and mentality here. All opportunities are open to me. The government doesn't interfere. So why leave? I can build my future here.
Thank you for this conversation. So everyone, subscribe to Denis Yeliseevich's channel if you want to get both hope and truth in one place. And be sure to like this video, leave us a nice comment, and subscribe to the Liberty UA channel. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.